So we have more news announced for the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2021. I had literally just finished doing a video talking about the Great Khali, who has also been announced to be inducted this year into the WWE Hall of Fame. So this will follow after this video, but it's just been announced that Kane, yes, Kane will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2021 this year. On today's edition of WWE's The Bump on YouTube and social media, The Undertaker made a surprise unannounced appearance and announced that Kane will be the next name to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2021. Now, Kane joins the 2021 class made up so far of former WCW President Eric Bischoff and former WWE Women's Champion Molly Holly, and also the Great Khali, which, as I mentioned, I've already filmed something about that, so that will follow on after this. Also to be inducted this year will be the 2020 class minus Batista, as he and WWE want him to be inducted in front of a full crowd, and Batista currently has other commitments he cannot get out of, so he will be inducted at a later date. The WWE Hall of Fame ceremony will air on Tuesday, April 6th, in the week leading up to WrestleMania. So this has literally just been announced in the last couple of seconds. As I mentioned, it was announced and revealed on The Bump, WWE social media and YouTube show. I really wish I could. I really wish I could actually show the video of this. If you're watching this, you'll be on YouTube now anyway. But if you haven't seen the way that they announce this on The Bump, the way that they've been doing all of these Hall of Fame announcements this year is basically surprising people. And I really don't know how legitimate a surprise it is, but every single time that these announcements have been made, the people who have been receiving them appear to be incredibly shocked and incredibly surprised. So when it was Molly Holly, it was Shane Helms, formerly the Hurricane, former tag team partner of hers in WWE, who revealed the news to her. Whether it was with Eric Bischoff, it was Corey Graves that made the announcement on the After the Bell podcast. For the Great Khali, it was actually Ranjan Singh made the announcement. WWE India made that announcement on Instagram. Again, we'll have a video in a second talking about that. And for Kane on The Bump, it was The Undertaker, his kayfabe brother, who made the announcement to him. And every time anyone's ever made these announcements or revealed that they're going to be the next name to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, the emotion is really is incredible. And it was no different here for Kane and The Undertaker. It was kind of, I don't want to say awkward, I don't think that's fair, but it was kind of like, so The Undertaker's there, he makes the announcement, he says, you're going to be the next name into the Hall of Fame, and honestly, Glenn Jacobs, Kane, his face drops. It drops. He's smiling, and then he just, like that, and he starts looking down, and he's just, it almost goes quiet, and you can tell The Undertaker's kind of trying to sort of pad and fill time, because Kane just goes quiet because he's so overcome with emotion, and he can barely get any words out. He says, obviously it's a distinct honor and this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for you. And he starts to get obviously very emotional, very choked up. He's fighting back the tears, and it's just such a heartwarming moment to see. It really is. It really is a real heartwarming moment to see. And obviously, I did the video about the Great Khali, and we'll touch on that in a second. But when I spoke about Khali, I said that there might be some criticism, or it might polarize some people, of people saying, does the Great Khali really deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? Is he a Hall of Fame worthy professional wrestler? Is he a Hall of Fame worthy WWE superstar? That isn't the case with Kane, obviously. He is, if there's anyone that deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, it's Kane. It really is. Talk about a guy that's had an incredible run with the company. What hasn't he achieved? He has achieved everything. Whether it's world championships, he's multiple-time WWE and world champion, he's a multiple-time intercontinental champion, tag team champion, hardcore champion, you name it, Kane's done it. The only thing he hasn't done is win a Royal Rumble, pretty much, but for a period of time, he doesn't anymore. For a period of time, he held the record for the most eliminations. I still think he holds the record for the most Rumble appearances. For a period of time, he held the record of the most single eliminations in a Royal Rumble match. The feuds, the tag teams, the moments he's been a part of during his career. He was with the company. He still technically is under contract, still does have matches. His last match was being part of the Royal Rumble in January, wasn't it? But, he made his debut with the company as Kane in 1997. Previously, of course, he had been part of the company as Isaac Yankem and the Fake Diesel. So this is a guy that's been with the WWE since the mid-90s, and we're in 2021 now. And just what a heck of a run. And the way that his character has evolved over time, it's incredible. You've got the initial Kane with Paul Bearer, then Eventually he learns to talk, and eventually, or he starts to talk. He uses the voice box. He's obviously, his initial feud with The Undertaker was incredible. The match at WrestleMania 14, the moments there of setting The Undertaker on fire in the casket, The Undertaker's return, the Inferno match, the tag team with X-Pac. I mean, some tag teams he's been a part of during his career, you know, the Brothers of Destruction, in a variety of forms. The Brothers of Destruction, where you've still got this sort of the Dead Man Phenom version of The Undertaker. You've got the Brothers of Destruction, where The Undertaker's the American Badass. You've got... again, they come back and they've been tag teams for a plethora of times throughout their career together as the Brothers of Destruction. You've also got, as I said, tag teams with X-Pac, tag teams with Rob Van Dam, of course a tag team with Daniel Bryan, Team Hell No, which was later on during his career. Just the way that Kane has evolved over time, it's incredible, and it's I don't want to say it's unparalleled, because obviously the greatest character in WWE history is his brother, The Undertaker. That is the character that over so many years we've seen evolve and change, and there's been a constant story to his character. But arguably you could say that, talk about a character really evolving, I don't think The Undertaker's had so many different looks and so many different iterations of the character, but really it stayed true to what he was. I mean, obviously the American Badass was completely different and completely removed from what he was doing as the Phenom, as the Dead Man, but Kane is one of those people that he's always evolved and he's always changed into something different. As I mentioned, whether it's a heel, a babyface, a comedic character, a monster, taking off the mask in the mid-2000s and then becoming completely deranged and crazy, setting Jim Ross on fire and being under house arrest, and Tombstone and Linda McMahon. And there are so many Kane moments, aren't there? You know, the marriage to Lita and all that kind of crazy stuff, tombstoning a priest, his fascination with attacking Pete Rose, all of those WrestleMania moments at WrestleMania 14, 15, and 16, where he attacked Pete Rose. I mean, all of it is just fantastic. And as I mentioned, obviously, The Undertaker is arguably the greatest character ever created by WWE, and arguably the greatest superstar created by WWE, and one of the best WWE superstars of all time. But if you want to talk about great characters, and one of the greatest characters that WWE has ever produced, it's The Undertaker there, and it's Kane right there. I mean, Kane is arguably, you know, one of the greatest characters ever produced by WWE. The longevity that it's had and still has to this day, because he's not finished wrestling yet. Whether it's, again, Mask Kane, Unmasked Kane, Voice Box Kane, Team Hell No Kane, whether it's, you know, the corporate Kane, where he removed the mask and he was a corporate stooge for the Authority, whether it's him coming back now as the mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, as Glenn Jacobs, but still being Kane at the same time. All of it. He's, I mean, so deserving, so deserving. As I mentioned when I spoke about the Great Khali, in the sense that people could argue when it comes to Khali, well, there are far more deserving names that need to go in first. And again, I don't subscribe to that. But Kane is obviously one of those names, that he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I spoke about this yesterday when we spoke about RVD, because obviously RVD has been reported to be entering the Hall of Fame this year. He hasn't been confirmed as of yet. But I mentioned at the time that I wasn't sure who was going to be the headline, who was going to be the big name being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year for the 2021 class. Obviously, Batista was going to be the name in 2020. He's not going to be a part of it this year because he's got other commitments. But I said, you know, who's going to be the big name? I didn't think that Rob Van Dam was that, you know, that real top name. And obviously the Great Khali's going in. He's a big name in India, but he's not the name to headline the class and anything like that. And the same with Eric Bischoff and Molly Holly. Kane's the name that can headline the class. Kane really, truly is a name that can headline the class. So I think we've just found our sort of headline superstar, headline professional wrestler that's going to be headlining the class this year. I think it's Kane, and he's so deserving, beyond deserving. And it's a fantastic pick, and I'm really glad to see one of my favourite WWE superstars of all time, just because, you know, like I said, he's been around so long. Everyone's got a memory. Everyone's got an iteration of Kane that's been around for years, and, you know, so deserving, so beyond deserving. He's absolutely should be the headliner for this year's Hall of Fame class. As far as who does induct him, I think obviously it's the same guy. I think that's going to be that announced that he was going to be in the Hall of Fame this year. That would be The Undertaker. I think it's a no-brainer. Nobody else should be inducting Kane, but the Undertaker, and I would assume that that will be the case. So absolutely fantastic news that Kane is the latest name to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Fantastic pick. There are so many Kane memories and so many versions of Kane that I'm a massive fan of, and it's fantastic. It really is fantastic. I just wish that maybe he came out to the his theme song, the Slow Chemical theme song from the mid-2000s at the Hall of Fame. That is my favourite. It really is my favourite. My favourite entrance theme, even though I am a fan of the classic as well, his first entrance theme as well. I hope also as well they've got Vince McMahon shouting "That's got to be Kane" when he makes his entrance for the Hall of Fame. That would be great as well. Nevertheless, it's looking like a really strong class this year, isn't it, for the Hall of Fame? You know, you're now looking at Kane, the Great Khali, Eric Bischoff, Molly Holly, and rumoured Rob Van Dam. That's a really strong list. That's a really strong list. Every single person on that list, in my opinion, is Hall of Fame worthy. Again, I know people are going to say, oh, the Khalis and all that kind of stuff, but Kane, it's a no-brainer. One of the greatest characters ever produced by WWE, and even to this day, still a fantastic character in the world of professional wrestling. Still has a ton of evolution and evolving still to go for Kane. So absolutely, congratulations to Glenn Jacobs Kane, the latest name into the WWE Hall of Fame. Let's move on to the Great Khali now, which I did record earlier. So a bit of breaking news in the last couple of minutes, because the latest name into the 2021 WWE Hall of Fame class has been revealed, and it's a former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, none other than the Great Khali. WWE India has taken to social media to announce that the Great Khali will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Khali, of course, is a former WWE World Heavyweight Champion. His last official match with the company was at the Greatest Royal Rumble, which was in April 2018. His former manager Ranjin Singh revealed the news to him on WWE's Instagram today, WWE India's Instagram today. It said, quote, Great Khali will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and there is a video of the Great Khali's reaction to his manager and friend Ranjin Singh breaking the news to him as being part of WWE Hall of Fame class of 2021. Of course, this year's ceremony will air on April 6th, and will feature both the 2020 and 2021 Hall of Fame classes, minus Batista, of course, because he and WWE wanted a full crowd for his induction, and I believe actually Batista is actually currently over in Australia filming the Thor Love and Thunder, or prepping for the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 filming, so he's just unavailable. There was a tweet yesterday that he posted talking about prior commitments. He wasn't able to. It's going to happen at another time, so that's the case with Batista. But of course, the Great Khali joins the likes of former WCW President and Raw General Manager Eric Bischoff and former WWE Women's Champion Molly Holly in the 2021 class so far. So there you go, the Great Khali. Certainly a surprising name. I don't think it was one that had been rumoured. We did a video yesterday talking about Rob Van Dam, because it has been reported, not announced or revealed as of yet, but it has been reported that Rob Van Dam will also be part of the 2021 WWE Hall of Fame induction class. I don't think many people saw the Great Khali coming. I just did a tweet talking about it, because I keep, you know, when sometimes news stories are announced or things are announced on social media, and you just know that it's going to polarize, and you're going to have people that are for it, against it, and you're going to have lots of different and differing opinions on the topic. And I think the Great Khali being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame is kind of a similar situation here. I know, as I mentioned, I think it's probably going to polarize on social media. But to be honest, I don't see why. I really don't see why. I know people will say, and this will be the criticism of it. This will be what people say in response to this. They'll talk about names that are more deserving and names that should be in the Hall of Fame. They'll talk about your Vaders, etc., the Lex Lugers, and the list goes on and on, doesn't it, of former WWE and WCW and ECW stars and just legends of professional wrestling that are not inducted into the Hall of Fame as of yet and deserve to be in there. Well, like Demolition is always a name that comes up, etc. Those names obviously are deserving of a place at the Hall of Fame, and people get very angry when other names are put in there ahead of them. And you have to remember that whilst this is a Hall of Fame, it's the WWE Hall of Fame, and it's kind of a political process. The Hall of Fame, especially in recent years, has been a way to sort of bring people back into the fold that previously had heat or bad problems with WWE, Ultimate Warrior, Goldberg, Bruno Sammartino, the list goes on and on, doesn't it? of those kind of names in the past that turned it down, said it wasn't a real Hall of Fame, that kind of stuff. And in fairness to WWE, they've done a very good job at legitimizing it over the course of the last few years, with the likes of having the Ultimate Warrior, having Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino, those kind of names be inducted into the Hall of Fame. It does feel like a legitimate Hall of Fame at this point, I think. But people will be critical of the Great Khali going in there, saying that he wasn't a very good pro wrestler, he was just a giant and all that kind of stuff. And again, my response to that is, yeah, he wasn't a very good pro wrestler, but he was 7'3". He was 400 pounds. He was an attraction. You know, when it comes to Khali, yes, he was, he was a horrible, he wasn't a technical great pro wrestler, and he wasn't even, a good big man or anything like that. There are far better big men and giants in the history of professional wrestling than the Great Khali. The Big Show and Andre the Giant are two of the, arguably the two greatest giants in the history of professional wrestling. Was the Great Khali a technical classic or anything like that? No, but he was never going to be. He was an attraction. This is kind of the same with Omos as you go into WrestleMania. And I remember seeing reports about him saying, oh, he's very green and he's not very good. It's like, again, it's what you expect. If he's good in the ring, great. That's a bonus, because the thing with him, and it's the same with the Great Khali, the whole point of putting him on television and putting him inside of a WWE ring is that he was an attraction. He's 7'3". It's people in the crowd going, oh my gosh, I can't believe a person like that even exists, that big. It's the wow factor. It's selling TV shows, it's selling tickets, it's selling pay-per-view buys, it's selling subscriptions nowadays to streaming services. I want to see that guy go up against someone smaller. I want to see that guy go up against this big powerhouse, because this guy's twice the size of him, and surely he would be undefeatable. I mean, it's classic pro wrestling. It's classic pro wrestling. So whilst the Great Khali, I understood the criticism of him not being a good pro wrestler, it wasn't the point. He didn't need to be a good pro wrestler. He needed to be a giant, and he did that very, very well. So I never understood that when it came to that criticism, and I don't really subscribe to that criticism of, oh, he wasn't a good pro wrestler, so he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Well, is that really the criteria? Is the criteria that you need to be an amazing technical masterpiece pro wrestler to be in the Hall of Fame? I don't think it is. You have to look at your contribution to the professional wrestling business. And the Great Khali has had an excellent contribution to professional wrestling and the industry as a whole. He has sold a lot of tickets. He has sold a lot of pay-per-views for WWE. He's a former World Heavyweight Champion. I know people get angry that he was the World Heavyweight Champion because, again, he wasn't good in the ring. But you also have to look, he had a run with the WWE that was nearly 10 years, right? He was in WWE from 2006 to sort of 2014, something like that? So nearly 10 years. And the odd cameo here and there when he returned after the fact. So not only is his run, for a guy of his size, usually these giants, they come and go. I mean, we're talking about absolute miracles of nature, and people like the Great Khali and, the Big Show, the Andre the Giants, those kind of people, they don't come along that often. But big men in the world of professional wrestling, especially WWE, they come and go. They get a big push because of their size, but eventually they disappear because they don't have the staying power. The Great Khali had significant staying power in WWE. I mean, he could have just been the dominating giant that destroys people and gets a main event push and even wins the world title, but then he was able to adapt. He was able to adapt and turn into a babyface and the Punjabi playboy and all that kind of stuff, and he did become a comedy character, but man, he was there every single week. He was there and up and down the road. I mean, and his contribution to the industry overall, not just the run he had in WWE, but the contribution to the industry he had in terms of the awareness of professional wrestling in India, which of course is where the Great Khali is from, is second to none, and sometimes it's overlooked. The Great Khali is mythical in the country of India, and the Indian market, I mean, we spoke about it at length here at the channel, especially when we had the Superstar Spectacle earlier this year. The Indian market is a market, and that Asian market is still a market that WWE is trying their best to infiltrate to this day, because not only is obviously the population so vast, and it's such a dense population there, and it's a huge amount of people that if they can really sink their teeth into, they can make a ton of money, but also it is a country and it's a region that is just obsessed with pro wrestling, obsessed with professional wrestling. Here on the channel, we've got quite a few subscribers that are from India. Why? Because they're obsessed with pro wrestling. They're like everyone that subscribes to this channel, absolutely obsessed with pro wrestling. And the Great Khali is one of a big driving forces of exposure in that Indian market, and the exposure of WWE and professional wrestling in that Indian market. You know, you see the reception he gets whenever he returned to India when he was a WWE superstar. It would be insane. I mean, we're talking about airports being crammed with people, you know, which seems crazy now in the modern day, doesn't it, that we're currently living in with the pandemic. But there's lots of different, you know, factors, I think, that go into the Hall of Fame. It's not just, oh, they were an amazing pro wrestler. Obviously, there are names that are surefire Hall of Famers, like your Undertakers, like your Shawn Michaels, like your Hulk Hogan's, Ric Flairs. Those names are a given. Those names are a given. But I think there's certain criteria. And I don't subscribe to the theory that, well, they were a terrible pro wrestler, they can't be in the Hall of Fame. Why? You know, the Great Khali, he wasn't the best pro wrestler. Yeah, and he would probably agree that himself. He didn't think that he's, you know, was going to put on any technical classics, but this guy had some big main events. He was a world heavyweight champion. You know, he had main event matches, or at least title matches at the likes of SummerSlam, and main evented pay-per-views, and had gimmick matches like the Punjabi prison match. And again, I know people will roll their eyes and say, well, they weren't good matches, but look, they sold tickets. They sold out arenas. They delivered ratings on SmackDown. You know, and he did have staying power in the WWE. He was there. You don't see people over 7'3", last nearly 10 years with the company. You know, count them on one hand, the amount of people that have managed to do that. It's Andre the Giant, it's Big Show, it's Great Khali. Who else is of those giant professional wrestlers have managed to have the staying power in that company that the Great Khali had? There's not many people. And he is a former world champion. And again, for the exposure that he brought for professional wrestling to India and WWE in India, I think he's absolutely deserving of a Hall of Fame induction. He is. He's arguably one of the most famous Indian professional wrestlers of all time. Absolutely, he's deserving of a WWE Hall of Fame induction. So I'm sure, as I mentioned, the criticism will be of this move that, oh, well, he wasn't a good professional wrestler. Oh, and there are far more deserving names. There are always going to be far more deserving names. And do we wish that they went in first? Absolutely. Sometimes it takes a while for them to get there, unfortunately. You know, the Macho Man Randy Savage, he did get eventually inducted. When was that, 2015? But he should have been inducted 10 years earlier, if that. I mean, you know, but these things, this is how that Hall of Fame works. This is how that Hall of Fame works, but I think it's a good pick. And if you really want to split hairs and look at people that don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, there are far worse people that are currently in the WWE Hall of Fame than the Great Khali that shouldn't be in there. I think the Great Khali, for his contributions to WWE and professional wrestling and you name it, absolutely he's deserving of a spot of the Hall of Fame. Absolutely. And I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see him in there. I really am. I think it's a great pick, and once again, it's WWE trying to reach out to new regions across the world. They had the Superstar Spectacle earlier this year, and obviously there's the rumours about NXT India possibly coming soon, of those expanding the NXT brand and moving one base that was going to be based in India, or at least have Indian talent based in the United States and eventually moving across to India or something like that. So it's just more of the same when it comes to that. It's WWE looking to expand in that market, and I think the Great Khali absolutely is deserving. Absolutely is deserving. Is there an Indian superstar or an Indian wrestler who's had more success in WWE than the Great Khali? The answer is no. The answer is no. And obviously you can talk about, you know, Jinder Mahal and all that kind of stuff, but when it comes to the Great Khali is a native Indian. You know, Jinder Mahal obviously I think was raised in Canada, I believe. Like with the Singh brothers. So obviously they've got heritage based in India, but the Great Khali, in terms of being an Indian superstar, there's nobody that was more successful in the WWE that's from India than the Great Khali. So absolutely he's deserving of the Hall of Fame. And I know some people will say that's terrible. You know, again, the criticism will be that there are far more deserving names and that there are better wrestlers that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. That's true. But I don't think the criteria of being into the WWE Hall of Fame is just you were a great professional wrestler. I think there's far more other things you have to consider when it comes to that. And look, I think he's absolutely deserving. So congratulations to the Great Khali, the latest name in the 2021 class for the WWE Hall of Fame, joining the likes of Eric Bischoff and Molly Holly. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. I'm very interested to see what you guys think of this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. It really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings, and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.